September 1944. A German major looks an American officer in the eye and says, "If Patton wants this fortress, he will have to kill me to get it." Patton's answer is 4 cold words. "I can arrange that." That is как конкурент заходит в историю про крепость. April 1945. Southern Germany. Картина похожая по степени безумия, но совсем другая по сути. The war in Europe is already decided on paper. Hitler is finished. Cities are burning. Camps are being liberated. Everyone in the Allied headquarters is thinking about lines on maps and future occupation zones. Everyone, except one American general who is about to risk his career, his reputation, and his relationship with the Supreme Commander over something that, на первый взгляд, выглядит почти абсурдно for a man like him. Horses, not a few cavalry mounts, not farm animals, more than 1,000 elite horses concentrated in one place, behind collapsing German lines in Czechoslovakia, Lipizzeners from Vienna, Arabians from royal stables, rare bloodlines taken from across occupied Europe. The living art of centuries, parked like loot on the wrong side of a line that says, "This territory belongs to the Soviet zone." And George Patton has a direct order not to cross that line. He is sitting in a requisitioned German manor house that serves as Third Army headquarters. Outside, engines idle, trucks move, artillery units reposition. Inside, under a single lamp, Patton is reading a report that should not matter to a man whose army has freed hundreds of thousands of prisoners of war. But it does. A German veterinarian has defected. He brings details that sound almost insane against the backdrop of total war. At a stud farm near a town called Hostau, the Germans have concentrated roughly 1,200 horses. Lipizzeners, Arabians, heavy warm bloods, bloodlines that survived Napoleon, the First World War, and every disaster in between. Now they are trapped between 2 kinds of threat. From the West, American units are pushing forward, under strict political orders not to cross the agreed demarcation line with the Soviet Union. From the East, Red Army columns are closing fast, bringing with them their own priorities and their own ideas of what liberation means. Somewhere in the middle, Waffen-SS units, cornered and desperate, have already discussed destroying anything of value rather than leaving it for the enemy. The veterinarian says it plainly. If no one moves now, those horses will either be shot by SS officers with pistols at point-blank range or driven east in a chaos of retreat and requisition. Entire bloodlines will disappear in a week. This is not speculation. The man names stallions, mares, sires, and dams as if he is reciting a family tree. He produces a hand-drawn map of the Hostau complex, stables, paddocks, guard posts. He describes the German officers who chose to risk being shot for desertion to get this information to the Americans, because they no longer trust their own side, not to kill the animals out of spite. On top of this report lies another document. It is short, typed, and much colder. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force Directive. No American ground operations beyond the demarcation line without explicit approval. That line runs west of Hostau. Patton reads the directive again. He knows what it means. The entire alliance with the Soviet Union is balanced on a knife edge. Stalin is suspicious by default. If an American armored column drops into territory that is supposed to be Soviet, it can be described as a provocation. If it turns into a firefight, it becomes a political incident. Eisenhower has made it clear: no cowboy moves. No personal crusades, no solo adventures. Now someone is standing in front of him saying, there are 1,200 reasons to break that rule, and all of them eat hay. He calls in his chief of staff, Major General Hobart Gay. Gay does not need an introduction. He has read the same reports. He has already written the cautioning note from intelligence. He knows what kind of question is coming and how dangerous the answer can be. Patton holds up the folder. We have orders, Gay says before Patton even speaks. We also have one war still not officially finished. If you take tanks across that line without approval, it is not just a tactical violation. It is political. Patton looks at him, expression flat. And if we do nothing, Patton asks, what happens at Hostau? Gay does not hide the truth. Best case, he says. Red Army gets there first, takes the horses, and we never see them again. Worst case, SS units shoot them or starve them before anyone gets there. Either way, they are gone. There is a long pause. For once, Patton does not fill it with words. He lets the weight of gone sit in the room. Gay pushes on. Sir, I grew up around farms, he says. I know what these animals represent to the men who handle them. I am not saying they do not matter. I am saying you are not being asked to choose between horses and nothing. You are being asked to choose between horses and your ability to keep command without starting a fight with the Russians before Berlin even falls. That is the kind of statement that, in any other context, ends the discussion. Orders win. Politics wins. The general sighs, says his hands are tied, and the story dies in a footnote of an archive. But Patton is not that kind of general. He reaches into a different drawer and pulls out an old black-and-white photograph. Himself, decades earlier, in a cavalry uniform, mounted on a dark horse before anyone in Europe knew his name. He puts it on the desk between them. Do you know what I did before tanks, Hobart? Patton asks. You were cavalry, sir, Gay says. I lived on the back of an animal, Patton says. I trusted it with my life. You do that long enough, you stop seeing them as equipment. He taps the veterinarian's report. These are not just animals, Patton says. They are a part of European history. You do not get them back once they are gone. You cannot rebuild them from scrap metal and requisitions. You destroy them, and you are burning a museum without walls. Gay does not argue with that. He argues with reality. And when Eisenhower asks you why you crossed the line, Gay says, what do you tell him? That you disobeyed orders to save horses, while there are still German units retreating, while the Soviets are watching every move. I tell him the truth, Patton says. I tell him we discovered valuable property in danger and moved to secure it before SS units destroyed it. And I tell him it was a reconnaissance that went further than expected. The logic is brutally simple. On paper, it is a recon. In practice, it will be one of the most politically sensitive moves Third Army has made all war. Patton does not ask Gay for permission. He never has. He asks him for a name. Who do we have that can get there fast, hit hard if necessary, and not fall apart when the plan changes in contact, Patton says. Gay does not hesitate. Andrews, he says. Task Force Andrews. 30 minutes later, Captain Thomas Andrews stands in the same room. He is not a staff thinker. He is a field officer whose resume is written in miles driven and engagements survived. He has led tanks through shattered French villages, across river crossings under fire, into German rear areas where the situation changes every hour. He looks at the map. He listens to the veterinarian's story, to the numbers, to the word demarcation line. Then he asks the only question that matters to him. What happens to me and my men if someone decides this was a bad idea after the fact? Patton does not dodge. If it goes wrong and the Soviets decide to make a political case out of it, Patton says, it will not be you they call to London. It will be me. You will say you followed my verbal order. Which is the truth? Verbal, Andrews repeats. There will be no paper, Patton says. No signature. You will get coordinates and a mission statement. That is all. Andrews studies the map again. The route is not simple. Bridges, unknown German pockets, unknown Soviet patrols. And in the middle, a farm full of horses and Germans who might be enemies, allies of convenience, or something in between. Let me get this straight, sir, Andrews says. You are ordering me to cross a politically sensitive line, potentially run into the Red Army, and negotiate with German officers, all to pull out 1,200 horses that are technically not ours. Yes, Patton says, that is exactly what I am ordering you to do. Andrews could refuse. In theory. In practice, refusing a direct order from Patton is not an option if you want a career. But he is not just thinking about his career, he is thinking about his men. What are the rules of engagement with the Russians? Andrews asks. You do not engage them, Patton says. You are lost. You are confused. You are following retreating German units, whatever you need to say. You smile, and you leave. You are not there to start the next war. You are there to end this one in a way that lets us look in the mirror afterwards. And with the Germans at Hostau? Andrews asks. There is a regular Army colonel running that place, Patton says. The veterinarian risked his hide to contact us. That tells me their command is already halfway to surrender. Offer them terms. If they cooperate, we treat them as prisoners of war and protect them from the SS. If they do not, you use your tanks. The veterinarian, sitting silently in a corner until now, finally speaks. General, he says in halting English, the colonel is not SS. He is cavalry. He will not fight to destroy the horses. He will fight to keep the SS away from them. If you come, he will surrender to you rather than to them or to the Russians. Andrews looks at the man. There is nothing heroic about him. He is tired, still in a worn German uniform without insignia. But there is something in his voice, not fear, not self-preservation, protectiveness. How soon until the SS get nervous and start shooting animals just to follow orders? Andrews asks him. The veterinarian does not hesitate. They already shot some, he says, as punishment, to show they still decide. If you do not come in days, maybe hours, they will shoot more. And if the Soviets arrive first and think they can take these horses as war trophies, there will be no breeding program. They will break them, work them, scatter them. That image hits deeper than any abstract argument. Stallions that have never known anything but the controlled discipline of an arena, hooked to wagons, whipped by men who see them only as muscle. Andrews nods once. I will need fuel and ammunition, he says. Enough to go out and come back without stopping to beg. And I will need someone in logistics who understands that this column has priority, even if they do not know why. I will handle logistics, Gay says, quietly. Patton leans forward, closing the distance between himself and Andrews. This is not a glory mission, he says. No one back home is going to see you charging across a field on horseback. They will not understand why it mattered. Some historian might write about it 30 years from now. Maybe. But the people who will know for certain are the men who work those stables and the breeders who come after. He pauses. And me, Patton says. I will know. I will know whether I let fear of politics kill something that did not have to die. Then he makes the stakes explicit in a way no YouTube script can afford to bury. If this blows up, Patton says, I may lose any chance at post-war command. I may be finished. That is my risk. Your risk is different. You risk walking into Soviet-claimed territory with 350 men and a column of tanks, with no backup plan if something goes sideways. If you have a problem with that, say it now. Andrews is quiet. This is the moment where a character becomes real for the viewer. He is not a mouthpiece. He is a man doing the math between duty, survival, and the insane idea of driving into enemy territory to save horses. He nods once. I have seen worse odds, Andrews says. I have had dumber orders land on my lap. At least this one makes sense in a way I can explain to myself later. Patton snorts. You do not have to explain it, Patton says. You just have to execute it. Andrews stands. When do we move? He asks. At first light, Patton says. You brief your officers in 2 hours. Do not mention the word line in front of your men. They do not need to know where politics ends and your route begins. They need to know 3 things. 1. We are going deep. 2. Resistance is possible. 3. We are bringing something back that cannot be replaced. Andrews nods again. Understood, sir, he says. As he reaches the door, Patton adds one more thing. Captain, Patton says, you do not let a single one of your men die for a horse. If it comes to a choice between them and the animals, you choose them. Every time. Clear? Yes, sir, Andrews says. He leaves and the door closes. In the corridor, Andrews stops for a second. He is a professional officer, not given to drama, but he cannot ignore a single simple fact. He has just been told to cross a line that everyone in the theater has been told not to cross, for reasons that will never show up in any official report. If anything goes wrong, no one in London or Washington will say, "We ordered them to do it." They will say, "We did not know." And they will be telling the technical truth. He pushes that thought aside. There is no time to dwell on it. He has to wake his platoon leaders, explain a mission that will sound unbelievable, and make sure no one decides this is the moment to start asking ethical questions about orders. Back in the office, Gay looks at Patton. You realize, Gay says, if this ever reaches Eisenhower before it is over, he can pull you out of command before your tanks even reach Hostow. Patton does not flinch. If he pulls me, he pulls me, Patton says. He cannot reverse the bullets that will already have left the SS pistols, and he cannot bring back the bloodlines if they are gone. His problem is politics. Mine is that map. He points at Hostow. Somebody has to look at that spot on the paper and decide whether we are the kind of army that lets something irreplaceable die because we were afraid of a conversation with the Russians, Patton says. I am deciding we are not. Gay nods slowly. He does not agree with everything Patton does, but he understands him. Then I will make sure no one puts this in writing, Gay says. That, Patton says, would be the first sensible thing anyone in this building has done all week. A few hours later, while most of Europe tries to sleep through another night of war, engines turn over in a dark German village. Tanks move. Trucks line up. Men climb aboard, still half asleep, clutching rifles and wondering why they have been pulled out of their billets before dawn, when everyone keeps saying the war is almost over. At the head of the column, Captain Thomas Andrews receives a final, simple radio message from headquarters. Task Force Andrews, the voice says. Proceed to coordinates as briefed. Report only if situation changes. Godspeed. He keys his microphone. Copy, Andrews says. Moving. The column starts east, toward a line no one is supposed to cross, toward a place most of them could not find on a globe, toward a mission they would not believe if you told them in any other context. Behind them, in a quiet room with a single lamp still burning, George Patton sits with his hands on the edge of the map and waits for the moment when a column of tanks will cross from the world of orders into the world of consequences. April 30th, 1945. The war is supposed to be in its final days. Berlin is burning. Hitler is hours away from putting a pistol to his temple. Most commanders are thinking about capitulations, ceasefires, and post-war zones of occupation. Captain Thomas Andrews is thinking about getting 350 Americans and more than 1,000 horses out of Czechoslovakia before the Red Army arrives and before some SS officer with a pistol decides to turn history into a pile of carcasses. The column has been on the road since dawn. Shermans in front, half-tracks and trucks behind, fuel Bowsers tucked into the middle like a nervous heart. The men are tired. But this is not the exhaustion of weeks of combat. It is the wired, brittle fatigue of a mission that feels both insane and precise at the same time. Andrews rides in the lead tank, hatch open, headset on. The German veterinarian, crammed into the turret with the commander, points out landmarks as they go. a church steeple here, a factory chimney there. Every correct turn is one step deeper into a place they are not supposed to be. Twice, they pass groups of German soldiers walking west with their hands up, rifles slung barrel down on their shoulders, white cloths tied to bayonets. These men look at the American tanks and move aside. They are done fighting. They expect to be processed, fed, interrogated. They have no idea that this particular column is not looking for them. At one crossroads, a small Wehrmacht unit has parked 2 guns to block the way. The barrels are not even crewed. When the Shermans roll into view, the German lieutenant steps into the road, helmet off, hands up, ready to surrender. Andrews does not have time for ceremony. "Tell him to get his guns off my road," Andrews says to the interpreter. "If he wants to surrender, he can walk west. We are going east." The translator repeats it in German. The lieutenant stares, confused. Men surrender toward the enemy, not away from him. He starts to speak, to explain that his men are willing to lay down arms. Andrews cuts him off. "Move the guns," he says. "You have 5 minutes. Then we drive through you." The lieutenant does not need a second explanation. He barks orders. Men scramble. The guns are dragged aside. The American tanks roll past, not even slowing down. One of Andrews's sergeants mutters over the intercom. "Sir, we just refused to surrender?" "We did not refuse," Andrews says. "We postponed. Someone else will collect them. Our job is not to babysit defeated Germans. Our job is at Hostau. It is a brutal prioritization, the kind of choice you make only when you are operating under a clock no one else can see." By late afternoon, the landscape changes. The veterinarian becomes more animated, pointing more often. "Here," he says, tapping the map with a finger. "There is a rail line. After that, forest. Then Hostau. We are close." Andrews orders the column to spread out. If there is going to be resistance, it will be here. German units, SS detachments, stray flak guns repurposed for ground fire. There are too many unknowns. The first sign is not gunfire. It is silence. No villagers stand in doorways to watch. No scattered German stragglers appear with white flags. The road feels empty, abandoned in a way that makes the hair on Andrews's neck rise. He orders the tanks to button up. A half-mile later, the first shot comes from the tree line. It slams into the glasses of the lead Sherman and ricochets off with a shower of sparks. The gunner does not wait for permission. "Contact. Front right," he yells. The 75mm barks. Trees explode into splinters. Another shot answers from deeper in the woods. This one hits a half-track in the flank. Armor plate dents inward. Men curse and duck. "SS," the veterinarian says, voice tight. "Regular army would have put out a flag when they saw Americans. SS will hold to the last." Andrews gets on the radio. "All tanks, pivot right," he says. "Suppress the tree line. Infantry dismount and flank. We clear this in 10 minutes or we bypass it completely. We are not fighting a half-day battle here." The tanks swing their turrets. High explosive rounds tear apart the edge of the forest. American infantry pour out of the half-tracks, hugging the ditches, moving in low bounds. The Germans respond with small arms and a few more anti-tank shots. It is enough to be lethal if you let it drag on. Andrews will not. "Smoke the right side. Hit the left with everything," he orders. "We punch a hole and go through. The ones who want to die for a forest can stay in it." Within minutes, white smoke blooms between the trees. Under its cover, infantry toss grenades and push forward. The resistance breaks. Some SS men fall back deeper into the woods, firing blindly. Others drop their weapons and try to blend in with regular Wehrmacht uniforms. No one stops to sort them out. The column surges past, leaving behind a few burning tree trunks and the echo of gunfire. No one in the column knows it yet, but that was probably their last pure combat engagement of the war. It does not feel noble. It feels like clearing an obstacle. Then they see Hostau. From a distance, it looks like any large farm complex. Low buildings, fenced paddocks, a rail siding, a few small towers. Closer, the details become wrong. Holes in the roofs, black scorches on the walls, a smell that is not just manure and hay, but something sharper, more bitter. Andrews halts the column on a rise that overlooks the complex. Through binoculars, he can see German soldiers moving inside the perimeter. Some wear field gray, others wear black uniforms that need no introduction. SS, Andrews says. How many? The veterinarian squints. Last time I was here, 2 SS platoons, he says. Maybe 50 men. They have machine guns in the corners. Regular army in the main building. Andrews sees something else. Dark shapes on the ground near one of the paddocks. Too large for people. Too still for anything alive. What is that? He asks. The veterinarian does not answer immediately. He does not need to. Andrews can guess. I told you, the veterinarian says quietly. They already started shooting some, to show they are in charge. For a moment, the mission stops being abstract. Those shapes out there were living, breathing animals a day or two ago. Now they are examples, like bodies hanging from lampposts. Andrews gets on the radio. All units, listen up, he says. We are going in. Tank Platoon 1, you take the main gate. Tank Platoon 2, swing left, cut off the rail spur. Infantry, be ready to dismount on my order. We do not level this place. We smash the SS, secure the stables, and control the German regulars. Watch your fire near the barns. I do not want to explain to Patton that we saved the horses by shelling them. He switches to the German frequency through the interpreter. This is an American armored force, the interpreter broadcasts through a loudspeaker. We are here for the horses. Regular army officers, if you want to live, you will step away from the SS and lay down your weapons. SS personnel who fire will be treated as enemy combatants and will receive no mercy. Inside the complex, movement changes. Some figures run toward the gate, others run away from it. The SS officers have heard enough Allied broadcasts to know what no mercy means. A white cloth appears briefly on the roof of the main administrative building. Then a shot rings out, and the cloth disappears. That was the colonel, the veterinarian says. He tried. Andrews does not wait for a second attempt. He drops his arm. Go, he says. The Shermans roar down the slope. They fire over open sights at the gate towers. The wooden structures explode into splinters and fire. Machine guns on the walls open up, stitching tracers across the dirt. One tank takes a hit to the hull. The round fails to penetrate. The crew inside swear and keep driving. As they smash through the main gate, infantry jump from the half-tracks and fan out. The air is suddenly full of sound, shouting in English and German, the crack of rifles, the deeper boom of tank guns firing point-blank into SS positions. Horses scream from the paddocks, panicked by the noise, slamming against stall doors. Near one of the barns, an SS officer grabs a pistol and points it at a white stallion's head. A German groom tackles him from behind, knocking his arm up. The shot goes into the air. The SS man turns and shoots the groom instead. A second later, a burst from an American BAR catches the SS officer in the chest. He drops beside the man he just killed. Scenes like that play out in seconds, all across the complex. SS men trying to use animals as leverage, as shields, as hostages. Grooms and veterinarians intervening, sometimes at the cost of their own lives. American soldiers making split-second calls about when to shoot and when to hold fire inside a maze of wood and flesh. Near the main barn, Captain Andrews almost collides with a German officer coming out with hands up. He is middle-aged, dirt on his uniform, no arrogance left. I am Colonel Lessing, the man says in accented English. I command this installation. We surrender. My men surrender. The SS are in the East Wing. I tried to make them leave. They refused. Andrews points a pistol past him. "Get your people away from the SS," Andrews says. "Now. Anyone in gray who stands next to someone in black when my men see them is going to get shot on principle." Lessing nods and runs back inside, shouting orders in German. Soldiers in field gray start dropping weapons and moving toward one side of the yard. SS men, seeing their human buffer evaporate, fall back into the remaining solid buildings, firing from windows. Andrews points at the east wing. "Tanks," he says. "That." Sherman guns swing. The first shell takes out the corner of the building. The second hits just above a window where a machine gun muzzle flashes. Brick, dust, and bodies fall together. In less than 20 minutes, organized resistance is over. The SS who are not dead are wounded or captured. Regular Army troops sit on the ground, hands on their heads, watched over by American riflemen who are constantly glancing at the barns. The air smells of burned wood, cordite, blood, and the heavy, unmistakable scent of terrified horses. Only now does Andrews have time to really look. Dozens of animals stand in paddocks, eyes wide, sides heaving. Some are thin, ribs visible under their coats. Others still shine, evidence of the obsessive care of men who fed them from their own rations. In one field, a small cluster of bodies lies where the veterinarian said they would be. A stallion with a perfect profile, now ruined by a bullet hole between his eyes. A mare on her side, flank already stiffening. A young American private stops next to Andrews. He grew up in a city, does not know breeds, but he knows what a deliberate killing looks like. "They executed horses, sir," he says quietly, like they were prisoners. Andrews does not answer. There is nothing useful to say. Colonel Lessing comes back, breathing hard. "You are too late for some," he says, "but not for most. They started shooting yesterday to show they still had power. I had to stand there. I could not stop it. I am not SS. I am nothing to them now." He looks at the dead stallion and does not bother to hide the anger. "Now," he says, "tell me what you are going to do with the ones still alive." Andrews points to the road they came in on. "We are taking them west," he says, "out of this zone, away from the Russians, away from your SS. We have trucks. We will need your wagons, your saddles, your harness. We need your men who know these animals." Lessing looks at him, surprised. "You will take my men?" he says. "You surrender to us. You are our prisoners," Andrews says. "Our responsibility. That includes those who know how not to kill a Lipizzaner by feeding it garbage or running it into the ground. You help, you live. You do not help, you still live, but you do it in a fenced camp without horses. Your choice." The colonel does not hesitate. "My men will help," he says. "Most of them have been here for years. They care more about the animals than about Berlin." Andrews nods. "Then get your veterinarians and grooms organizing," he says. "We start moving at first light tomorrow, all of them. If we leave some behind, they will not be here when the next army comes through." That night, Hostow looks like something out of another century, dropped into the wreckage of 1945. Under the weak glow of lanterns and vehicle headlights, German grooms and American soldiers work side by side. They clean hooves, check legs, patch up wounds from shrapnel and bullets. They rig improvised picket lines and repair harness straps with bootlaces. In one corner, a young American medic, used to patching up men, bandages a gash on a mare's flank. The German veterinarian watches his hands. "You do that well," the vet says. "I have had practice," the medic answers, "just not on 4 legs." The vet nods once. "Tonight, there is no difference," he says. There are moments of quiet that feel almost indecent after months of war. A private stands with his hand on the neck of a gray stallion, feeling the animal breathe. The horse's skin twitches under his fingers, but it does not pull away. "You think they know we are trying to help?" the private asks. His sergeant shrugs. They know we are not the ones with pistols to their heads, he says. That is a start. At dawn, the column looks nothing like it did the day before. Tanks and trucks are still there, but now there is a long line of horses behind and beside them. Some are in makeshift paddocks on flatbed trailers. Others are led in hand by Germans and Americans alike. Pregnant mares are put in the safest position available, between vehicles that can shield them from sudden noise. Stallions are spaced apart so they do not fight. Andrews stands on the hood of a jeep and addresses both his men and the Germans. "Listen up," he says. "We are moving 1,000+ horses and more than 100 German prisoners across 200 kilometers of roads that are not safe in the best of times. The Soviets are not far. There are still armed SS bands wandering around. If anyone decides this is a good moment for drama or heroics, I will personally make sure they regret it." He looks at the German side. "You," he says, "keep the animals calm and moving. No racing, no beating. If a horse breaks a leg because you were trying to show off, I will assign you to digging latrines for the rest of your captivity. If you do your job, you live out this war in an American camp with food and no SS. I am not negotiating this." Lessing nods. "My men understand," he says. Andrews turns to his own. "You watch them," he says. "Not as enemies with guns. Most of them do not have guns anymore. But as people who know something you do not know. How to manage this many animals without turning the road into a stampede. You see an SS tattoo, you tell me. You see someone looking like they are about to bolt, you stop them. But otherwise, you let them do what they were trained to do." The column starts moving, slowly. Tanks at the front, then trucks, then a long, swaying line of horses. It is the strangest convoy any of them has ever been part of, a mechanized army escorting the dying remnants of the age it replaced. Halfway through the first day's march, a Soviet reconnaissance aircraft circles overhead, engine buzzing like an angry hornet. Men on the ground tense. Andrews orders no one to fire. The plane makes one pass, then another. It is close enough that they can see the red stars on the wings. Finally, it banks away and disappears toward the east. Lessing watches it go. "If they send tanks instead of a plane," he says, "what will you do?" "Pretend we are exactly what we look like," Andrews says. "An American column escorting prisoners and livestock," which technically is not a lie. "That will not stop them if they want the horses," Lessing says. "No," Andrews says. "But it means the first man to open fire will have to explain to his own commander why he started a fight over animals on a road when the war is almost over. I am betting no one on their side wants that conversation any more than we do." By the time they reach American lines, 2 days later, the men in the column are exhausted in a way they have never been before. Fighting is simple compared to this. In battle, you shoot until it is over. Here they have been responsible, hour after hour, for fragile lives that cannot understand why the world around them is exploding. As the first Sherman rolls past a sign marking the edge of the agreed occupation zone, Andrews feels some of the tension leave his shoulders. They are back on legally safe ground. The hardest part is over. The horses do not know it. They know only that the road finally ends at a place with real fences, real stables, and men who do not look at them with casual contempt. Weeks later, word reaches Third Army headquarters in the form of a carefully worded Soviet complaint. A staff officer reads it aloud to Patton. "Moscow notes with concern the unauthorized presence of American armored units in territory assigned to Soviet forces, and requests clarification of the purpose of this incursion." There is more, a page of diplomatic language, but the core is simple. They saw something. They did not like it. They want an explanation. Eisenhower's headquarters forwards the query with its own clipped comment, asking Patton what exactly he thought he was doing, sending tanks east of the line without permission. Patton reads both documents and smiles without humor. "What do you want me to say?" Gay asks. "The truth," Patton says. "Edited." He dictates the response himself. Third Army reconnaissance units pursued retreating German elements and discovered a concentration of valuable livestock at risk of destruction, he says. In order to prevent waste and stabilize the rear area, the livestock was secured and moved into American lines. Contact with Soviet forces was minimal and non-hostile. No offensive intent existed. The movement has been completed, and the units are back within the agreed boundary. Gay writes it down, word for word. It is technically accurate. It is also a long way from capturing what really happened. Eisenhower's reply is short and cold. "George, do not do that again," it says in effect. "You are too close to the end of this war to be freelancing across political lines. There will be no formal reprimand. But this sort of thing cannot become a habit." Patton reads it, folds it once, and files it. "He is angry," Gay says. "He is right to be," Patton says. "I did exactly what he told me not to do, and I would do it again." There is no court-martial, no public scandal. But something shifts. When assignments are discussed for post-war commands, Patton's name is no longer in the first tier. Officially, it is because of other incidents, speeches, comments, a pattern of disregarding political guidance. Unofficially, everyone at Patton's level understands that there is only so many times you can be the man who does what he thinks is right, instead of what the alliance agrees on, before someone decides you are a liability. In that sense, Operation Cowboy does exactly what Andrews feared in that first briefing. It gives Patton one more mark in the uncontrollable column. Months later, Patton visits one of the stables where some of the rescued horses are temporarily housed. It is a quiet stop between briefings. No photographers, no ceremony. He walks down the aisle between stalls, smelling hay and horse sweat instead of diesel and cordite for the first time in years. A Lipizzaner stallion watches him with dark, intelligent eyes. The handler, an American sergeant now oddly fluent in halters and lead ropes, steps aside. "Want to?" the sergeant asks. Patton reaches out and lays a hand on the stallion's neck. The animal shifts slightly, then stands still. Under Patton's palm, he feels warmth, muscle, life. For a moment, he is not Lieutenant General George S. Patton, commander of Third Army. He is the young cavalry officer from the photograph on his desk, sitting a horse at a gallop, believing that this is what war will always look like. The handler speaks again. "They say these ones are going back to Austria," he says, "to that riding school, eventually." Patton nods. "Good," he says. "That is where they belong, not pulling guns or rotting in some field because someone wanted to make a point." He pats the horse once more and steps back. "General," the sergeant says hesitantly, "if you do not mind me asking, was it worth it? All the risk, crossing the line, making Ike mad, all that. For them." Patton looks at the stallion, then at the soldier. "We are very good at destroying things in this war," he says. "Cities, armies, regimes. We had to be. But if all we leave behind is rubble and graves, then we are not better than the people we beat. Those horses are going to outlive most of the men who tried to kill them. Their foals are going to perform in arenas for people who have no idea how close they came to never existing." He shrugs. "You tell me," he says. "Is that worth a few angry memos?" The sergeant does not know what to say. He just nods. In the years that follow, the official histories barely mention Operation Cowboy. It is a paragraph, a footnote, a minor action, a curiosity in a war of giants. The big books talk about Bastogne, the Bulge, the breakout from Normandy, the race across France. They talk about Patton's aggressive maneuvers and his controversies. They do not spend many pages on the night he decided that breaking a political rule to save animals was compatible with his duty as a soldier. But in Austria, the white horses perform in the Spanish riding school. Tourists clap. Riders bow. In the breeding records, there is a gap where certain lines would have ended. Instead, there is a note. Evacuated. 1945. Among the men who were there, American tankers, German grooms, a few surviving veterinarians. The story lives in a different register. For them, it is not about strategy or politics. It is about the moment when columns of steel and columns of flesh shared the same road, and both survived. And for George Patton, who does not live long enough to see the full post-war arc, it is one of the last decisions he makes in uniform that is not about killing someone. He violated a direct instruction from the Supreme Commander. He stepped over a line that diplomats had drawn. He gave his enemies and his allies one more reason to call him reckless. He also made sure that when the war ended, something of beauty walked out of it alive.